is there an opportunity to hit a more approachable, affordable piece of real estate that's zoned correctly for hospitality, where we can actually utilize that undervalued asset and get a higher and better use out of it? I mean, simply put, a hostel is very community based, and it has shared accommodations in many of the rooms. And you know what? There's a million ways that you can make money in real estate. There really are.
We were in negotiations.
Investing in real estate, they're winning, they're making money.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Real Estate Educators Podcast, where we provide the education you can build on. I am your host, Kevin Amolsch. As you've heard me say before, I'm having such a blast doing this podcast. We're helping real estate investors and educators. So you're out there building a portfolio, buying properties, or educating investors. This is the podcast for you. Super cool, fun, exciting guests. I'm excited for this one. Mr. Nathan St. Cyr. Hopefully I got that right. A hostel business. So I've never had anyone, Nathan, on the show that does the hostel business, but I will share for the audience, the listener here, that you've been doing this for some time with a partner, and you quickly, within 3 years, actually went to #1 in the nation for small hostel in the business. The name of the business is How's It, spelled very unique, Howzit, Hostels. And I know you have a podcast yourself, so I want to dig into that a little bit. And I know you're educating other hospitality type listeners. So let's get into it, man. How's it going?
Yeah, aloha. Thanks for having me on. I mean, when you just these two areas that you really focus on are just both areas of passion. My entire life, I've had a passion for real estate investing, and now as we come into this new world, it's not just real estate investing; it's a shift of eyeballs equal equity. So, as kind of an old dog, if an old dog can learn new tricks, anybody can. So I'm really excited to dive into this with you. I'm pumped.
Oh man, I'm excited too. I didn't say that actually. Thank you for saying aloha, because your business is in Hawaii. We're recording this at 12:30 my time here in Denver, and it's 8:30 in the morning there. So quite the difference.
Yeah, always. Sometimes it's 5 o'clock when I'll jump on someone else's podcast. So
I can imagine.
this is actually late for a podcast on the mainland.
How long have you been living in Hawaii?
Over 30 years. So I've spent my entire adult life here in the islands. I was at college in California. I'm from Minnesota originally, and I went out to college, and I didn't come to Maui chasing rainbows and waterfalls. I followed a girl. So
Makes sense.
I fell in love my first year, my freshman year, and I had to make the decision of, do I go back to Minnesota or do I follow this girl? And I came from very little. We didn't have a lot of financial resources, so I'm like, I can only do one or the other. So I came to Maui, and then she dropped the bomb on me before we went back to college. She's like, I'm not going back.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I've got a big life decision in front of me. And I had to choose to break my mom's heart, who was all about education, or you know, not follow love. And obviously you can tell how it went. I chose love, and we're married with 2 daughters to this day. And I had to find a new path. And that's really, one of the driving forces behind what I did in the beginning years, was finding a way to create a bridge to be able to continue to connect with family in Minnesota. And that was going to take some financial resources. But so I've spent my entire adult life here on Maui.
Yeah, and we're going to get into it, man, but it sounds like it went pretty well for you.
Yeah, I do have to say, at this point, life does not suck.
Yeah. So Minnesota, huh? That's where the roots are. I do a lot of business in Minnesota, so we have quite the audience out there. So where in Minnesota?
Yeah, I'm from a small town. Well, it's not so small anymore. It was 5,000 people when I lived there, and now it's like, I don't know, 30,000. But Elk River, Minnesota, about 35 miles northwest of Minneapolis.
Okay, and we're in Minneapolis. Do a little bit down in Rochester, but it's mostly the cities there that we're in business. I can imagine it's a bit warmer in Hawaii. So tell me a little bit about. Well, I got to ask this question. The whole island time thing, is that real? Are you like always chill and It's like pretty laid back. Tell me about island time.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And I think that's one of the reasons that I've had success here is that I'm not on island time. I'm not wired that way. It's not my life force. Like I'm I've been very successful here because of the concept of no man, I'm all of the characteristics that take no talent, from perseverance to persistence to hustle, all of those things. I was captain of the football team, and not because I was talented, but because of hustle and hard work and all the things that it takes. And so I've brought all of those characteristics to everything that I've done. And so I have never lived on island time. But island time is very real, and many of the people that are here definitely are here and living on island time,
So
which
that
can
to,
which can make it difficult.
I can imagine so, dude. So you're telling me that one of the keys to success is to get off of island time.
Yes.
Writing that one down. All right. So your background in hospitality, I find that interesting because hospitality is, some people would say it's not really a real estate play. It's more of a business. Nothing wrong with that. It's probably a fantastic business, but it's very different than a normal real estate transaction. Did you get right into the hospitality side of things, or did you do the single family, upgrade a little bit, and then work your way up?
Okay, that's a good question, but I want to address what you first of all said.
Okay.
That hospitality is not a real estate play, it's a business play. So I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. And the reason that I'm gonna push back on that is, at the end of the day, in commercial real estate, what you're looking to accomplish is to increase the value of the asset, correct?
Typically.
And the concept there is that you increase NOI. I mean, it's really that simple. You either do it through
Okay.
you either do it through from an income approach, right? You either do it,
There's a missing piece here though, Nathan. You have a cap rate also. So
yep,
if you have a triple net warehouse compared to a hospitality where you have nightly stays, those are very different to manage. So your cap rate's going to reflect that. Yes.
absolutely. But I want to go through the valuation piece, because this
Okay.
is this is a really important piece to me, and why the hospitality asset class can deliver such significant returns.
I'm not going to argue with that.
And the reason for it is because of what you said. You differentiated, well, there's a business that is attached to it, right?
Right.
You're providing a product or a service. But what that does to me is it takes this underlying asset and it says, well, how do I get the highest and best use out of that asset from the opportunity to create the most NOI? And within hospitality, because it is a business, like you said, now you have more levers to pull, right? And that's the fun part. That's the exciting part, is I have levers that I can pull within hospitality in the business that can differentiate me from the competition, and ultimately take that underlying asset value and allow us to, like, for example, our first hospitality property that we purchased, we took from a valuation from an $821,000 purchase to an 18 months to a $5.2 million appraisal. And we did that through pulling the levers of the hospitality business. So I do agree with you. I do agree with you, but I also want to look at it from, okay, but I'm really looking at the underlying asset to start, and how can we use that underlying asset with our knowledge in hospitality to increase the value of that asset.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. And I'm not saying that it's good or bad. I have clients that are buying hospitality. So I understand that there's a higher return on your investment potentially, and definitely a higher net operating income, as you suggested. I just
There can
find
be.
it, yeah, okay, fair enough. I actually owned a hotel out in Branson, Missouri that was a freaking disaster. So I haven't had the same experience you have in that business. Um, it's just different. It's like a short-term rental, like the Airbnb thing is sort of fizzled out a little bit, but do you remember how popular that was all across the country? You kept hearing, increase your cash flow on your rental properties, rent them by the night. Well, that's great, except for it's going to take a hell of a lot more work. So it's not just make more money. I mean, there's effort here. I guess that was my only point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would say that there is effort, and there was a heavy lift in the beginning. But I can also say that we're generating in a couple of properties here in the islands, $2.5 million of gross revenue with close to a 40%, 60/40 expense ratio, 40% NOI, and we're doing it with between my business partner and myself, really spending 5 hours a week on the operational side. So yes, it can be a very heavy lift if you're in the business. The goal, I think, with anybody as they want to grow and scale and create a real time freedom and passivity in their life is not to work 80 hours a day, right? And so that's been the really fun shift for us, is being able to spend our time in our zones of genius, which I think you focus on a lot, which is the opportunity also to market and to grow in other ways than just the actual underlying real estate. And that's where our focus is. It has been able to shift to because of the infrastructure that we built.
Well, I do want to get into that. I want to get to my other question that we
Yeah.
went over. So let's just start there. So you got into this business. Sounds like it's a fantastic business. Did you work your way up to that, like buy the single family home and just rent it out long term first, and then work your way, or did you just go
Yeah.
head first?
Yeah, so I purchased my first home after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like, many journeys start.
Yeah.
So did mine, and that was, back when I was a 20-something-year-old kid on the journey of, okay, here's the answer. I had to find a way to make my money work for me, and although I always wanted to invest in real estate, I thought it was out of touch, and so I started flipping cars and made money there. Didn't go well. I got scammed. I lost it all. And then
Oh,
but look, the concept I believed in. I've got to find a way to take the money that I make here in the islands, in the service industry, distribute that into things that make me money and that will compound over time. And so I just never left that, and look, I went from flipping cars into to day trading. Well, day trading went worse. And but the conviction and the fundamentals never changed for me. I knew that ultimately real estate was where I wanted to be, and so I went and stepped into my zone of uncomfortness, and I sent out a letter to all of my mom's contacts that she had. And back then, she literally mailed me her contact list, and I literally hand wrote a letter and went to Kinko's and made copies and put them in envelopes and sent them out to everybody. But raised my first $10,000 and purchased our first little duplex here on Maui, and did a house hack and lived on the studio side and lived for free. And so that's where my journey started. My journey started in long-term rentals with the concept of, if I do this over time, it's going to compound and it's going to change my life. Now, back then, I had this goal of, if I can have $500,000 worth of assets delivering me 10%, if I can increase my financial IQ, 10% cash on cash, $50,000 a year, I'm going to retire and ride off into the sunset. Well, as life goes on, they say, lifestyle creep, but now it's like, wow,
yeah.
my daughters, I have two daughters, their private school education is over 50 grand a year. So that would not work. So as time went on, real estate was a real passion. But I also found that leadership was my highest and best skill set. And so I found an opportunity here in the islands, with selling timeshare, where I created became a great salesperson, and then from there led sales teams and built sales teams. And what I learned during that 15-year career was that those skill sets are incredibly transferable into the entrepreneurial world, and in building companies, and in growing, ultimately in growing teams and building wealth. And so, one thing that I'm constantly just trying to communicate to people is like build your skills, like skills transfer, whatever you're doing, whatever you're passionate about. If you can do that, forget about the money part of it. If you can go and build those skill sets, you will become more valuable. And then those they transfer. There's fundamentally so many things are similar. And so through this journey, I was also feeding the money that I was making from my sales leadership career. I was funneling that into real estate. I was doing different things. I ended up doing long-term rentals along the way, but then I also did a ground-up development. And along this time frame, I recruited my business partner from San Diego. Not at the time, it was just to be a sales agent. I didn't know that he was going to end up being a long-term business partner, but we worked together. We were colleagues for 7 years, and we recognized we both were very aligned in wanting to create generational wealth. We both had passion for real estate, and we both wanted to do big things. And here's the key, we had complementary skill sets. I was the team builder, the visionary, all of those things, and he was the executor. He was the detail oriented system creator. He'd bought and sold businesses prior to this. So we were a really, really good fit. And we went through an educational course um, to buy apartment buildings because we really found that commercial real estate, that was where our long-term, we were limited with, like you said, short-term rentals is where he was, but regulations and everything that came falling down on that, we recognized that wasn't going to be the scalable business for us. Long-term rentals, that was a slow growth play, and we really understood that if we could go and leverage forcing equity within commercial real estate, that's where we wanted to be. And we took an educational course in multifamily investing through Neil Bawa, and we graduated from it. We came out all ready to rip and buy our first apartment building together. We made our first call, and on that first call for an apartment building here, we wanted to start in our neighborhood here in the islands versus going to the mainland. So we just felt more comfortable with that. We made our first call, and the real estate agent said, this property just went under contract today. And we're like, oh man. But here's what happened. In the little description, the comments, it said previously being run as a hostel. And we were like, huh? What is, what it says previously being, what was that? And anyway, this real estate agent picked up on that we had this curiosity. And as a smart real estate agent, he's like, bam, he started sending us all of this information on the global hostel market and how the United States was really far behind.
Yeah.
And we were like, what? And I'd never even stayed in a hostel. My business partner had 20 years ago, and he was just had a gap year after college and was traveling around the world. But we knew nothing about hostels. But all of a sudden, with my business partner's knowledge of short-term rentals and the margins, because that was very difficult for us in the apartment building game. We looked at the margins that he was making in hospitality and short-term rentals, and we're like, it was always like, gosh dang, there's just the margins are so much fatter in short-term rentals. But hotels, they weren't even on our radar because I don't think a hotel on Maui has sold under 25 million in the past decade. And so we're like, wait a minute, is there a way here? Because it was an apartment building valuation. Is there an opportunity to hit a more approachable, affordable piece of real estate that's zoned correctly for hospitality, where we can actually utilize that undervalued asset and get a higher and better use out of it? And so our journey began.
Oh, that's a great story. I want to make sure everyone knows what a hostel is, because when I first read this, I'm thinking about the movie.
Yeah.
So help us understand what's the difference between a hostel and a hotel?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, simply put, a hostel is very community based, and it has shared accommodations in many of the rooms where you're renting by the bed versus by the room. Um, and I think that, yeah, let's address first of all the stigma in the United States of America, especially if you're not in the 20 to 30 range. Anybody over 30, a lot of times when they hear the word hostel, they're like, oh my gosh, dirty, gross, cheapest thing, backpacking, smelly. Well, that's fair, right? But it also shows why there's more hotels in the world than in the United States of America than anywhere in the world. But yet we don't even crack the top 15 in hostels. There's only 309 hostels in the US. So the US has a very different stigma about hostels, and therefore that industry never moved forward like it has globally. So when you go to Europe and when you go to Asia, there are hotbeds for these unbelievable experiences. There's massive companies out there. The company of Generator, as we started getting into this, they purchased 4 hostels in the United States for $400 million. And we're like, okay, there
Holy
is
cow.
yeah, there's opportunity here. This is a US thing. There's a challenge in the US market. However, so to go back to the question though, what is a hostel? So if you were to go on to our website, howsithostels.com, or you were to go to our Instagram, right, How's It Hostels, you would see you'd probably be pretty blown away if you're someone that has the hostel stigma. You'd be like, dang, this is like a swaggy boutique hotel with an unbelievable experience. Because everything within a hostel, the magic is about creating experience together. We take people, we have 15 passenger vans where we take people around the island. People come as solo travelers or they come as, small groups and they get to know each other where our human nature a lot of time makes us want to isolate. So we have a whole model that actually gets people to break the ice. They go out during the day and they'll, whether it's a beach day or chasing waterfalls or going snorkeling or whatever it is, they do this together instead of being solo. And then not only do they do it together, but when they come back to the hostel, we have an unbelievable community space where now they're cooking together. Now we have stages where we have karaoke and we have margarita nights and pool tables. And so the whole design is set up to really accentuate the human experience. And then what that does is it allows us to, yes, the rooms you can either rent by the bed, and we do have rooms that are private. You can just rent like a regular hotel room. But the concept is to bring people together to have an experience. And in today's hospitality world, that's where the largest growth is occurring in experiential stays.
This episode is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial is a private lender specializing in short-term rehab lending to real estate investors. Got a property that needs some love? We can help. We are able to offer funding solutions because we raise private money from individual investors. With more than 15 years of experience, Pine offers passive investors an alternative that provides stability, consistency, and security to your portfolio. If you like real estate but want to avoid the ups and downs and effort, a Pine mortgage fund could be a perfect fit for you. Accredited investors will experience an 8% preferred return and profit sharing. Diversify your portfolio out of Wall Street and into Main Street with a Pine Financial Group mortgage fund. Get more information at pinefinancialgroup.com. That's pinefinancialgroup.com. You're making me want to stay at your hostel, man. I've never stayed in a hostel. I feel like how do I say this? I feel like I missed out a little bit. So I went into the Army out of high school. I never got the dorm room experience. I had the barracks experience with a bunch of dudes. And now the hostel, I was like, oh, maybe I get my wife to do this. Let's just take one trip where it's going to be a little bit more affordable. And that's not happening. She's not doing it, but maybe this will change your mind. I don't know.
Yeah, well, look, I also think that there's stages, right? We are not marketing to everybody. We are really marketing, and it's really unique that if you really kind of look at our avatar, I think being successful in business and real estate, you have to know who you're marketing to, and so our avatar is really 80% of our guests are between the ages of 20 to 30, and if you think about that age range, Generation Z, that's Gen Z. They crave community, but they've also grown up in a very different world. They've grown up in a world where, shared commodities is consistent in their life. So whether it was Uber, like when Uber came out, I was like, there's no way I'm getting in some dude's car. No way. His car that he drives around to work in, I'm not getting in that thing. Like that's crazy. I'm not sharing this car, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Or WeWork.
it's today, it's like anytime I go anywhere, it's like I'm just Ubering, right? It's like, oh, we don't need a car, let's just Uber. It's but for me, I had to change, I had to go through this like stigma change. They just grew up in this world. 40% of Gen Z has done some sort of co-living, right? So they go from whatever they're doing in college or whatever, and then they co-live. They either rent a home by the room or they do some sort of co-living situation. So they've just grown up in a very, they don't have the same stigmas that I have because of just generationally in the US. So it's really cool that there's this generation that craves community, that wants unbelievable experience, and they want it to be Instagrammable. They want to be able to
Yeah.
they want to be able to post on TikTok and Instagram. So we have all of these experiences that are designed to also look sick.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so you've definitely done a great job of selling this hostel business. If the listener was like, "Oh man, maybe this is the way to go," because look, it's hard to get cash flow in real estate right now. We all know that. Maybe there's a way to put a little bit more effort in and get into the hospitality side of things. Where would someone go if they were interested in looking at this?
Well, I would say, first of all, if someone really is interested, look, we spend our entire life force educating people on this area of asset class. We call it the passionate asset class because it's also really fun. I think when any of us have a little free time, what do we want to do? We want to go on vacation. And when we're on vacation, how do we feel? We're like, why don't I do more of this?
Do you
So
ever go sing karaoke? Are you up there getting that party started?
but the point is I think it feels really good to invest in hospitality assets as well, because there's this value that we put on experiences in life, and to be able to provide that's really big. But it is an unknown for a lot of people. Like, how
Mhm.
do I even do this? How do I even get started?
I
So
wouldn't even know where to start. That's why I
yeah.
was asking a question. Like,
Yeah.
where
So
would I
we
go?
teach, yeah. So first of all, start with listening to our podcast. We have a podcast called the Hotel Investor Playbook. And if you go and look at, we get messages, man, I had no idea that I could do this. We're starting to get messages from people saying, I had no idea, like I've wanted to do this, it's been a dream, but they've actually gone through. And look, we have industry experts from how to lend. We really focus on the four pillars of hospitality, which is acquisitions, one. How do you acquire one of these assets, right? And then number two, how do you fund them? Like what is the funding? What does the financial stack look like? How do you fund them? How do you get financing? And then once you own it, how do you operate it? And this is a really key piece here is you don't necessarily need to be the expert. You don't need to be like us where we dug in for many, many years and figured it out. There are experts out there that will run these properties for you. That's a decision that you have to make based on your strategy, but just you can know. How do you partner with expert operators? Maybe you don't hire a property manager, but you partner with an expert, right? So how do you operate once you own? And then lastly, how do you market? Well, in today's world, the independent has such an advantage when it comes to marketing. So it's just unknown. The challenge that we find with most people is fundamentally they get real estate, but they feel like hospitality is there's so much unknown. So we really focus on bringing in guests that really where we focus in any of those and all of those four pillars to give people the confidence to go ahead and invest in the passionate asset class.
So that's great. So the Hotel Investor Playbook, it's a podcast. That's where we would start.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like this is important to you, the education piece and in educating I don't know if I want to say client, because I don't know if that's true, but to educate people. Is there something beyond the podcast? Is there any
I mean,
hand
I think
holding? Is there any like invest with you or
we don't personally we don't personally do that. Our goal with our podcast really is to be a source, right? And then from that source, we have the opportunity where people can find deals that maybe they're not comfortable with, and they'll bring those deals to us and we'll partner with them. Or um, that someone realizes, you know what, there's opportunity for higher returns. I don't necessarily want to do all the work of what it takes to invest, but man, these guys are killing it. And as we grow, that maybe they want to invest with us. That's really that's what we're doing with our podcast. That's the reason for it. But at the end of the day, our following is a lot of them are actually out there just making the moves, doing it. Now, we believe deeply in mentorship and coaching and masterminds. I'm in multiple masterminds myself. I'm actually the hospitality asset class expert. It's called the Hospitality Ace in a community. I'm wearing the hat, Action Academy. But so there's, if somebody has a passion to do this, you can do it. I just want you to know that if hospitality is the asset class you want to invest in, you will find the resources through coaching, through masterminds, through mentorship, through partnerships. There's no reason why you cannot do this. Zero.
When you, so if I was getting started, if I was getting started and I think of a hostel, I think of something large. And I know you said you converted a apartment building. Can
Well,
you do
that
something
property, yeah.
smaller?
So that property actually that we called on, we didn't purchase.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
we
What
we
was your first
actually,
one? How big was
yeah,
it?
yeah. So we actually purchased a building to convert prior to COVID. So um, long story short, during COVID, they changed the zoning and we weren't able to convert it. So, we learned some things there. Now, had we have already converted it, it would have been fine. So when you own something based on zoning and it's set and you operate it that way, even if they make a change, it's okay because you're grandfathered into the original zoning. So what we recognized is if we wanted to minimize risk, let's go and look at an active hospitality property. So we started knocking on all the doors. I mean, we went and bought this first hostel during COVID when it was ghost town. There were not a lot of people that believed in or thought, shared accommodations with bunk beds during COVID, that's what I want to invest in. People were terrified. They thought, the world was coming to an end and there no way are people going to sleep in bunk beds together again.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if you really go back and remember how when we knew nothing about what was going to be happening as we were moving forward, but we just believed that the world would solve it. And then we looked at our worst case scenario. If it doesn't, how could we operate this asset in um, just as a different type of structure, right? So we always have a worst case scenario, minimize risk, right? The first rule in real estate is make sure that you have a plan where you won't lose money, and then from there, what's the upside? And so we made that first purchase of an existing hostel here on Maui during COVID, and so we really look for, is the property hospitality zoned and active in hospitality? Those are the properties that would be the number one on our checklist for minimizing risk. Obviously, as we move forward, minimizing risk, we'll be able to do some things where we look at maybe an office building that's zoned the right to use in hospitality and then go through the entitlement change. And the reason for office buildings for us in urban centers is high volume of travelers, and um, office buildings have taken a big hit. And so their valuation is they're very, very undervalued assets. And for somebody to come in and convert it to a hotel or a multifamily, the infrastructure of plumbing and everything that has to take place, it's not cost prohibitive. It's not financially viable. But for us, because we have shared bathrooms and because we have shared kitchens, office buildings actually set up very well for us.
Oh, that's
So
interesting. That is so
yeah,
cool. Because I didn't think about that.
yeah.
You're right.
So
A lot of office buildings cannot be converted. It's cheaper. It's literally cheaper to tear them down and rebuild.
yes, yes, you're right. But for us, they're actually perfect. So that's a part of our investment arm that we're pushing into right now, and that's where you really get these, the potential for these asymmetric returns where you're purchasing an asset and you're able to really really accentuate the value in a short amount of time.
I love that. Is it possible? You've done some development, you said, so you probably know where I'm going with this, but is it possible to get your zoning and your approvals and all of that prior to closing on your contract? I mean, have
Oh,
you consider that?
yeah. So look, this really comes down to leverage, right? And what I mean by that is if you have a seller that's selling their building in a hot market where things are moving, then no,
Well,
that's going to be
yeah, they won't say
that's
yes
going to
to
be
that.
very difficult. However, if you have a seller that wants to sell or needs to sell, or maybe they don't even have it listed, but you can tell, look, this property is not doing well, and you're able to connect with that seller and say, hey, I think we have a win-win here. We'd like to purchase this property for, a higher value than what you could get selling it to anyone else. But here's what it's going to take. It's going to take a little bit of time. We need to do some research with the county. So you tie the property up under contract contingent upon what you find through the entitlement process. And then you go through that whole zoning process with the county. And you should have, before any of your money goes hard, you should have a 95% idea that what you're planning and what you're wanting to do, the county is going to support without public opinion or without any big hurdles in front of you. So yes, you can make these negotiations and contracts contingent upon that process.
Yeah, and for the listeners' benefit here, you could negotiate anything you want with a seller. So if they're willing to hold on until you get all of your approvals, not even 95%, like 100% there, you could do that. They
Yeah.
just have to agree to it, right?
Yeah.
The advantage, Nathan, that you have is you literally can pay more than anybody else because you're converting it into a cash cow. Somebody
Correct.
else isn't doing that. So you could potentially make it enticing to a seller to hold on and wait. So that's
Yeah.
one way for your rule number one, eliminate risk. That would be one thought I had, especially when it comes to converting office. So here we are near the end of the show, man. I'm going to go through my notes. I took a lot of notes on this episode, so I want you to listen to me and then tell me, what am I missing? What do you want to add? Then we got to get your final thoughts, your final piece of advice for our listener, and then all of your contact information. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So we started off how you got into this business. Well, first of all, we talked a little bit about Hawaii and Hawaii time, and I actually put on my notes here. My first note was to be successful, stay off of island time. Consider hospitality for the higher NOI. And you definitely pushed back when I tried to separate a real estate play from a business play. You did not sway me there, Nathan, but I do hear what you're saying. And I think hospitality is right for investors also. It's just different. That's all. So we talked about that. It's going to be less work than I think is what I wrote down. So you described 5 hours a week. That's pretty attractive, of course. Skills are transferable for you specifically, your sales skills and your leadership skills. And I 100% agree with that. And I would just add in there any marketing skills. You talked marketing a little bit later in the episode. I think that's the most important skill in business personally, but leadership is right up there as well. Sales, if you have enough lead flow, sales is, you could kind of screw that up and still be okay. Build your skills, focus on building your skills. And then when you're going to consider partnering with somebody or hiring people, complementary skills are vital. Need to know who you're marketing to. So that's when we started getting into marketing. Who's your avatar? Your podcast, where do people get started? You get started at the Hotel Investor Playbook podcast. Then you talked about the 4 pillars of hostile investing: acquisition, funding, operating, and then your marketing. Masterminds. Almost every guest, Nathan, that comes on the show talks about the importance of people in their lives and in their businesses. You're no different. You talked about coaching and masterminds and how you could use that to your benefit and how you could become successful. The number one rule for you is don't lose money. I think that's Warren Buffett's number one rule too. And then his number 2 rule is referred to number 1, right? So don't lose money. So be very careful there. You could do that in the hostel business too, it sounds like. So just learn a lot, learn what you can, and then don't let the fear of the unknown, I guess, stop you. That's my words, not Nathan's words. And then consider converting office to hostel because nobody's doing that, you guys. We hear people trying to buy these small office buildings and convert them to residential, either single family type long-term rentals or the hotel type stuff and even apartments. And it's just not working. I'm not seeing it happen, but I didn't think about it because it's the infrastructure. That's the problem. So this might be a solution to that. So how did I do on my notes?
Yeah, I think that summarizes the conversation very well.
Great. So we have people listening to this episode or watching on YouTube that are maybe a little bit newer into real estate. You have a very specific niche. It's never been on the show before. What's one final piece of advice that you could give the listener?
Well, first of all, we see this like absolutely everywhere. And you talked about coaching and mentorship, and it's just such a critical piece. With information that's out there today, like what we're doing right now, having this conversation. Like I love that you have listeners that are tuning in to wanting to learn by them listening to what you're currently having guests on. That's like the first step, right? The most important step, though, is to actually do.
Love it.
And it really is, though. And you know what? There's a million ways that you can make money in real estate. There really are. There's so many different. If all you're trying to focus on is where should I? Okay, is this what I want to do? Is this, oh, I better listen to this, and oh, I heard this, and oh, I better do this. The most important thing is just to get in the game, just to do it. Ultimately, you will develop your path, you'll find your passion, but it all has to start with doing, getting the reps in. I cannot, we talk about constantly that it's like, man, even while we're doing something, if it doesn't work out, negotiating a contract in some unique way and it doesn't pan out, and we took months to do it, that was not a waste of time, nor was it a waste of money. We're getting our education, we're getting our doctorate. So, but we wouldn't get that if we were like, oh, I don't know, that doesn't seem right. So the key step here is to go and actually take action, take that first step, go and do something.
Yeah, and if you get a great deal you think is going to be good for this strategy, reach out to Nathan. I mean, maybe he will partner with you or buy it from you. I don't know. I mean, there might be opportunities there. So if we are going to reach out to you, how do we get a hold of you?
Yeah, I just say if you have any interest or intrigue in what we're talking about with hospitality, yeah, give the Hotel Investor Playbook a listen to a couple episodes, and then from there you can reach out to us directly.
How's it hostels.com? Is it hostels with a S?
Yes. Yep.
How's it hostels.com? That's how I guess that's the website. So reach out to you.
Nathan St. Cyr on Instagram, or the Hotel Investor Playbook on Instagram, and then the podcast. Those would be the best ways to get in touch with us.
At Nathan_STCYR.
You got it.
You got it. All right, cool. Hey man, I know you got a lot going on in your life. You're out there in Hawaii, probably trying to get out there and get on the surfboard or something, but you chose to hang out with me. I really do appreciate the time. It's people like you that help add value to this show and to our listeners and help change lives. So I really do appreciate you coming on. And for the listener, you have other podcasts you could be listening to. There's lots of choices out there, and you chose to tune in here to the Real Estate Educators Podcast. We are so grateful for you for doing that. I hope you got a lot of value as much as I did. If you did, give us a 5-star review, share this with a friend, and I hope you make this day a great one. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you did, please be sure to follow and leave us a review. Oh yeah, and tell a friend.